G'day guys, and welcome back to the weekly VEMA Trader Market Scan. My name is Rhys, and today I'll be running you through the trades that we set up last week. We're going to take a look at them, see how they played out. Then we're going to take a look at Bitcoin as it stands today, see if there's anything we like to look at, and see if there's any trades that we want to set up for the week ahead. So what we'll do is we'll head to VEMA Trader and we'll get started. Righto, so none of the trades from last week actually entered. We had one position that we were already in last week. That played out really well. I'll get to that one. But the 4 trades that we set up last week, none of them entered. So it'll be a quick, easy wrap up here. The long from Alpha, we were looking for the break above this supply zone. I shut this trade as soon as we had that huge sell-off, right? Once we saw that, what I sort of thought we might see with this trade was invalidated, and I went, okay, I don't want to enter this trade if we do get back up there, so I cancelled this trade. And the other 3 trades were our shorts from Bravo. We had 2 shorts from Bravo. One was just a straight short, one was a short with candle close. And then we had a short from Charlie as well set up. So again, I'm just going to delete those. I do still like those areas for shorts, but I'm just going to get rid of them, start from scratch, and see what I'm seeing this week. We might end up setting them up again, but I'd rather do that than just leave these hanging and end up in a trade that I didn't actually want to be in. And finally, we come to the winner that we had. So this was the trade that we had entered 2 weeks ago, and last week we were looking at it and seeing how I was managing the trade. And I said that what I was doing was jamming my stop loss right up. I think I put it under this bear hammer. I think that's a candle we were looking at as we were recording the video. And the reason I was doing that was a concept called evolving risk to reward, which essentially showed that I was risking, my stop loss was way back down here, right? And I was risking all of that to just get that last little gain to get to the 0.36. Actually, it would have been even worse because price was, say, there at the time. And so I decided to jam my stop loss as far up as I could, put it just under to lock in some of the profits and still give me the option to hit that take profit if price continued to go through there. So that ended up being a really, really well-timed move on that stop loss. So I got stopped out 2 candles later, I believe it was this candle that stopped me out. That was just before I went to bed. I remember looking at it and going, oh, well, you know, I hope that that was a good stop out, but if, hey, price continues up to my take profit, it is what it is. I've still locked in some gains. I can always just add that as a tag. And then I woke up the next morning and was like, that was genius. I'm the smartest man alive. Could not have traded that any better. So I like to just give myself a little pat on the back occasionally, especially someone who is typically quite critical. But I did. I moved my stop loss well, and so that was a well-managed trade. And that's pretty much the only notes I have from this. So it was nice to get back in the win column last week after, I think, 2 losses in the previous weeks. And so that's it. That was the trades from last week. What we'll do now is we're going to take a look at Bitcoin and we'll see what we like the look of. And for a special treat today, we're going to take a look at the monthly because we had a monthly close yesterday on the 1st of May. So I won't really do much analysis here, but the thing to note is the monthly candle close as a big bearish engulfing. We had a doji, bit of indecision, and then a really solid bearish engulfing. You can see there's not a single iota of a wick to the downside. There probably is if you zoom in enough, but looking at it from here, there is really no wick to the downside, which shows that price was slammed down and stayed there. So not a great sign for Bitcoin at the moment. On the weekly, as every week, there was only the 1 candle close since last week's video. So last week we saw some indecision, bit of a doji forming, still a little bit more bearish than anything else, but not a whole lot of movement either way. When I look at this, I still think the higher probability is towards the downside. I still think we're probably heading towards that sort of 34k weekly demand zone that we have respected quite well before. I feel like we'll push further into it if we do head down there from here, because it's just really not a great sign that price only got back to the 38.2, didn't get near the 50, and then he's coming back down. Now, we could bounce right where we are. I'll clear some of my drawings to keep things a bit cleaner for you guys. There is a pretty weak weekly demand, no pun intended. Pretty weak demand zone there. It didn't lead to a higher high, right? It just led to a bit of a retracement, and we've punched through most of it. Last week's candle really pierced that zone heavily, so it's not something that I'm actually focusing on. But if you have to make a case for the bulls, that could lead to a bit of a bounce. I don't really expect it to. So for me, high time frame, I'm sort of expecting 34k, and to be honest, I feel like we'll probably pierce a little bit into that zone. I don't know if we'll get as clean of a touch as we got there. So that's what I'm seeing on the weekly. We'll take a look at the daily. On the daily, this looks like a bit of a mess at the moment, but bear with me, I'll explain the thing in a second. Again, I know I've been harping on about that bear flag for weeks, but we really saw the breakdown of that last week. We've really started to get outside of the bottom of that bear flag. Now, there's two daily demand zones that you could draw in. So we have this one here and this one here. Personally, I would not bother. So I just don't really like these zones. They're really big, wide zones, and both of them have been heavily pierced, right? You can see that this zone here, formed on that candle, has been pierced both on the retest and now, where we're sort of just consolidating our way into it. Now, you'll often hear me say that consolidation above support leads to a breakdown. It's something that I have found in my trading that a lot of the time, if I am looking for a zone to hold and we start really consolidating into it, or even just sitting on top of it, it often leads to that zone being eaten. So I really don't like the look of that daily zone. And just because of how wide it is, I couldn't really trade it. My stop loss would be huge. My risk to reward to any decent target would be like 0.5. So for me, I'd rather just get rid of it, look on the 4 hour, see if there's anything I can see there. And with this zone here, the second deeper zone, sort of the same thing, right? We heavily pierced it when we came back down to retest. We beautifully touched that weekly zone. You can see that red, the top of that red parallel channel, that's a weekly zone there. We touched that really well. So I would rather just get rid of this daily zone as well for the same reasons. Just sort of, it's kind of a useless zone to me. It doesn't mean it's not a valid zone, but if I'm not going to use it in my trading, in my analysis at all, then there's kind of no point in being there. It sort of just clogs the chart. So I'm just going to get rid of that. So yeah, really what I'm seeing on the daily is just that breakdown of the flag. I could potentially see us coming up for a retest. We may have had that retest here even. But a lot of the time I find a lot of people look at like really quick retests, like the candle or two after, which is probably what that one there was. I prefer to go for these sort of slower retests where, price might come down here, come back, you get your retest, and then we continue on. So, it may never happen. That may have been the only retest that we get there, but that's just more my style of trading. But overall, I really don't see a whole lot on the daily that makes me think anything other than 34. And that's kind of it. So high time frame bias, still quite bearish on Bitcoin. Righto, so finally we come to the 4 hour. Now, on the 4 hour, I finally have something that sort of makes a case for the bulls, which is kind of rare for me. So I'm excited to share that with you guys. But before I get to that, I'm still more bearish than bullish, and I'll explain why right now. So, in my opinion, the most important zone on the Bitcoin chart right now is this sort of 37,500-ish demand zone. Why I think that's most important is it's what's holding us up. You can see it was really nicely respected there. We're now holding it just there. We sort of started to eat into a little bit, which is a bit of a worry. We also ate it quite nicely earlier, but then retested it really, really nicely. So it's a bit of a funny zone in that regard. I see that as sort of the make or break point, right? That's kind of the line in the sand at the moment. It's what's holding the buyers there. If that breaks, there is not a lot of structure down to 35,000. So if that breaks, we could potentially see a pretty quick move down to 35. And so I really see that as a key level right now. To the upside, we do have this supply zone here, and it did lead to a small break in market structure, right? We closed a little bit lower than that, so we did form a lower low there. I'm going to delete it for the same reason as I deleted that daily zone, or those two daily zones, just that. I'm not going to trade it. It's kind of just annoying to me. It's a valid zone, but I'm not going to use it to trade, and it's kind of just making the chart messy. I'm going to get rid of it for that reason. The last thing that I see as a key level is this really, really important 4 hour EQ. I think this is kind of the make or break to the upside, right? If this is the make or break to the downside, that's a make or break to the upside. When I say upside, I'm talking pretty short term. Like I said, my weekly and my daily biases are both quite bearish. And so I'm not expecting a rally to 65k to be caused by anything this week. But if I have to make a case for the bulls, this EQ level, really, really important in my opinion. Now, what does make me think there may be some bullish movements this week is this descending wedge. Now, the important thing to remember with patterns is you kind of want everyone to be seeing the same thing you are with a pattern. And I don't feel confident that everyone will be with this pattern. Patterns are almost like self-fulfilling. If everyone sees a bear flag, more people start shorting because more people look at a bear flag, go, oh, bear flag's likely to break down. They short, they cause the market to move down, and it becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So you sort of want everyone seeing your pattern. I don't know if anyone's really seeing this pattern. I definitely haven't seen anyone talk about it, but that doesn't mean much. I don't really pay attention to how other people trade. I sort of just do my own thing. The sort of thing that I don't like about this descending wedge is this area here, right? We had a fake out, that's okay. One little fake out in terms of straight up, straight back in. That doesn't really faze me, but sort of actually closing above, continuing to move up before rejecting back in, that sort of looks to me like it's sort of broken the wedge. But then since we came back in, it really has been nicely respected. Like we've had 5 touches since that fake out, and also the touches that sort of led to the formation of the wedge. So not something I'm putting a ton of stock in, but definitely something I'm keeping an eye on. The complement to this wedge is this. Now you'll notice that I don't usually run indicators. I'm not a huge indicator trader, but I do like the CCI occasionally. The CCI is giving pretty good bullish divergence, right? So bullish divergence is when the oscillator makes higher lows. I hope I don't get that backwards. And the price action makes lower lows, right? So they're sort of disagreeing with each other. Essentially, these two lines are what we're talking about. So price here is getting lower, 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 lower lows constantly. Oscillator, the CCI, is getting higher, higher low, higher low, higher low. So that's kind of a case for the bulls, but I really think this EQ is the tipping point. Either we hold it, we break above, and then we can potentially run up, and there's a trade that I like here. I'll set that up in a second. That would essentially look like the daily retest of the bear flag I was talking about before. Definitely could happen. Not super confident in it, but something that I'm sort of looking at for this week. The other alternative is this EQ does not get broken. It stays strong. And I think if that's the case, we're more than likely going to eat this zone and we're going to head back down to around that 35k level. So those are sort of what I'm looking at as the higher probability things of playing at this week. You know, we could easily just bounce around, but those are the two things that I go, yep, that makes sense to me. That makes sense the way that I trade. And so I'm going to set trades up related to those. I'll do that and I'll talk to you guys in a second. And finally, we come to the most fun part of the video, the actual trade setup. So this week I'm going to be giving you 2.5 trade setups. How do you get half a trade setup? Well, the answer is that there is a long from Bravo that I'm looking at, but I'm not going to set it up today because I don't like the idea of setting it up today. So what I'm talking about there is my long from Bravo is essentially looking for the breakout of this descending wedge. It'll probably be trying to catch a retest depending on how things happen. I'll reassess when or if it happens, and then trying to catch the long up to the supply zone. I don't want to set that up as we stand today because if we get the break above Bravo in the next sort of day or two, and we're currently actually moving above Bravo, so we might see it right now, but I wouldn't be as confident in this trade because we may just head up, reject off the descending wedge, and then head back down. So I want to wait until we are much more in this corner, or even better, until we're sort of over here, and the break would be of both the descending wedge and of that 4-hour EQ before we head up to alpha. So that's one that I'm just going to keep an eye on. I'm not going to set that trade up today, but I thought I'd mention it because it is definitely something I'll be watching during the week. If I do end up seeing something I like and setting that trade up, I'll make sure to record a quick video and get it up on YouTube for you guys so you can see exactly what I was talking about and why I've taken that trade. In terms of the trades that I am setting up today, we have pretty classic for me, a short from alpha. So we have a 4-hour supply zone. We've got a really strong 4-hour EQ. I quite like the look of that level there. And the bear flag on the daily. So this would sort of be looking to catch that that higher time frame retest that I was talking about, and then potentially that next move down. Will we get it? Who knows? But that's sort of what I'm looking for there. So in terms of risk management, I've gone for 1% risk because it is with my high time frame bias. My high time frame bias is bearish. A fixed value stop loss just above the zone, as I like to do, and a fixed value take profit way down at this zone. That's a huge target, right? We're shooting for nearly an 11 to 1, a solid 10.89. I may move the take profit as the trade plays out. It's one of those ones where I'm like, look, that's what I'm going to target for now because I do think that's a pretty good level to target. Depending on what happens while we're in the trade, things might change. And so I might move my take profit. I will almost certainly move my stop loss and manage it down if I get the opportunity to do so if we do enter this trade. So that's it for risk management. In terms of the journal, pretty standard tags for me in terms of 4-hour EQ, 4-hour supply zone, that bear flag that I've been tagging for a couple of weeks, daily bearish bias with my high time frame bias, right? That's one of my favorite tags is with or against my high time frame bias. And the really unique or sort of the newer tags for this week are the less than 8 hours sleep and the 6 hours sleep. I slept well last night, but I did not get much sleep last night. And so I just think that's something that I like to keep track of, is how much sleep I had before I took trades. I noticed a couple of years ago that if I had less than 6 hours sleep, my trading results were suffering. I don't know if that's still the case. I'm actually really interested to find out. And obviously, 1 or 2 trades does not give you enough data to know, but that's a tag that I really like to keep track of. So I've got that in there for today. Confidence is a 6, and I am very happy today. The other trade I'm looking at is the breakdown of this demand zone here that I was saying is sort of that key zone. Now, I have put Charlie sort of midway through the zone, and the reason for that is I do think if we close, because I'm quite bearish on the higher time frames, I think if we close below those recent closes, we're probably heading down to 35. And so I sort of am happy to get into that trade maybe a little bit earlier than I typically would be for those reasons. So what we've set up is a short cross. Good thing we checked this because I forgot to put operate on candle close, which I always really want to have. I want to see the close below that level before I get into this trade. In terms of risk management, I have gone down to 0.1% account risk. Now, the reason for that is this is that sort of phase 1 strategy that we've been testing out over the last couple of weeks whenever we've sort of had the chance to do so. We've only taken paper trades on this strategy, and they've been really successful. It's actually worked out really well so far, but we don't have the data to really have confidence in this trade. I think it's Trading in the Zone by Mark Douglas. He talks about you need at least 20 trades before you can have really any confidence in a system, and 20 is still not a whole lot of confidence, and 20 is sort of just his level where he can start tweaking. He's like, okay, I have enough data now to make changes. I should be able to at least eliminate some of the variables that are just random chance by having at least 20 trades. I don't have 20 trades in the phase 1 strategy, but I am kind of impatient, and that's not a good habit to have in trading. But I like to just get live trading faster. Paper trading I find is really, really good for testing strategies, but I quickly just want to get live. So how I can sort of temper myself with that is to just massively drop the risk. So we're going for 10% the risk that we normally have because it's a test strategy. Minimum risk to reward is really important on this one because we are using that candle close. So having it as 2-to-1 means that if we close way back down here, we're not going to get into a trade that I don't really like the look of anymore. As is, it's about a 4-to-1, which is fantastic. So, by the time we get the close, it could be anywhere from a 2 to a 3. I'd be pretty happy with either of those as is. Same thing, sort of just a fixed value target. We're just targeting that next demand zone. And in terms of the tags, pretty similar. I've tagged the sleep again here. I've got the phase 1 tag because that's the name of this strategy, and I've also tagged test strategy because that's something else that I want to keep tracking, is how am I performing on my test strategies, or I can exclude test strategy in the analyze screen when I only want to see my really, well tested and what I would consider like my real strategies, the ones that I actually do use actively in my trading rather than just ones I'm testing out at the time. So those are the 2 trades and potentially the half a trade if anything does sort of happen around that Bravo breakout that I'm looking for. Now, most important thing to remember is always to hit submit when you are done setting up your trade plans. So we will confirm that. And that's it from me. So hopefully you guys got something out of this video. Let me know what you think Bitcoin might be doing this week. Where are we heading? What are we doing? Hopefully you guys had a great week. Have a great day, and I will talk to you very soon. Happy trading.